everyone, and welcome to the factory pattern in C# tutorial. This can also be called "Why is the new keyword sometimes evil and sometimes not" pattern, but that doesn't have the same ring as the factory pattern. So, put simply, the factory pattern involves the new keyword and it asking another class to instantiate the class with that instead of using it in a class that we have in front of us. So why should we avoid the new keyword? Great question. So let's take a look at an example. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a quick little class here. And this class is going to represent a concrete business object. So why not just call it concrete business object? Of course, obviously you guys will name it something else. And there it is, concrete business object. And this does lots of cool business related things in there, and you're taught very early in the programming process to go ahead and create one of these. My object equals new concrete business object, and there we go. Computer Science 101 says, good job, you've now instantiated a concrete business object. Go ahead and use it and abuse it, but we will call this evil. And the reason we're going to call this evil is because if I want to swap this out for something else, I can't do it because I've basically hard-coded my application to use this class. So, how can we make this less evil? Well, a few things we can do. This is where the factory pattern comes in. So we're going to go ahead and just create a factory in order to actually fully realize. So we're going to create a, let's call it object factory, and you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to make this static. You can use a non-static version of this, but for our example here we will. And this simply has one method, and it's going to be, it's going to return us a concrete business object. We're going to call it create. And inside of here, we're going to say return new concrete business object. And oops, let's make this here public. And let's see. Oh, and we need to make this static because we have a static class. Thank you very much, Mr. Compiler or Miss Compiler. And we come back out here and we can simply say, hey, instead of new concrete business object, we can now say object factory, create one. And then there we go. We now have an object created elsewhere. Now you may be saying, Kevin, but didn't we just move code around? And I will say, yes, you are a very astute observer. But we have two benefits right now that you may not have noticed. So if I need to get a concrete business object in the future, I will just use one of these. And when I come here, if we come here and if we now need an argument, so let's add an argument to our constructor here, and we now take some sort of string and it does a name of something. We now only have to make a choice here, so we can go call it foo or whatever we want, and we didn't actually have to modify this class at all. So that's benefit number one. Benefit number two is, what if I have more than one business object that would actually fit in here nice and cleanly? Why don't I add an abstraction? So let's just add a silly old interface here, and let's call this my iBusiness thingy. And iBusiness thingy should probably do something interesting, so let's go with void something interesting. And now that that does that, oh, what is wrong with you? Let's make you an interface, not a class. Hey, we're happy again. So we now say, Mr. Concrete Business Object, you actually implement iBusiness thingy, which means you have to now do something interesting. And now you're doing something interesting here, except that's not very interesting, is it? That is way more interesting. And now when we come to our object factory, instead of returning a concrete business object, we want to return an iBusiness thingy. Oh man, not a good day for typing. iBusiness thingy. And the compiler says, yep, you're okay because concrete business object is a implementation of iBusiness thingy. And if we come back out here to our program, it is now an iBusiness thingy. So my iBusiness thingy can do something interesting. However, the boss came, knocked on your door, and said, you know what, now we have a second concrete business object that you need to worry about. So let's create a second concrete business object. And we'll hit OK. And to make things, compliant, it also is an iBusiness thingy, and we'll implement its interesting thing. And let's make you more interesting. Oh, totally interesting. Very good. And now, when we come back to our program, this is still an iBusiness thing. However, we know, because we created the object factory, that this will only be returning us a new concrete business object. So, what if we had some sort of config operation that, if it were true, we return a concrete business object? Otherwise, I want you to return a second concrete business object. And yes, I know, Mr. Resharper, that doesn't help our people watching at home because that's all grayed out. So we'll be much more literal, and we'll say configuration manager, some setting equals configuration manager. And now I have to add a reference. Oh, and I've really made this example even tougher. So if we go into the assemblies here and we say, yes, we get something from maybe the app config. There we go. And we say, if some app setting, and let's convert this to Boolean. Oops. Yes, I want to use you. Yeah, and yes, I realize that. What if they don't put a true or a false in there? I get it. So we'll put that there. And if we say, if some setting, give me this guy. Otherwise, give me that guy. And our class over here, we still haven't had to change anything. So now we could put that app setting somewhere in an app config if we wanted to. And without changing our code and recompiling, we can now toggle between a business thingy that either does the concrete business stuff here or it does the second concrete business stuff. So the factory pattern allows us to do those sorts of things. So what I don't want you to do is go ahead and make a factory for every time you see a new keyword and go, aha, I need to make a new factory. No, in fact, when you do stuff like this, let's see, yes, new string builder, I don't want you to create a factory for string builder. When I see this, I don't want you to create a factory for that. Why is that? Because, well, string builder, there's a almost 100% chance, so we'll go with 99.99%, you'll never want to swap that out with something else. Same with list. Unless you plan on implementing your own list, you'll probably just be okay with using lists. So these are MS Core library things that you'll probably never switch out. So don't worry about those. Do not overdo the factory pattern and don't over create everything and whatnot. So just leave the new keyword in for that. However, there's one other instance that involves your custom code that I probably wouldn't recommend a factory either. And that would be some value object. And this guy right here is just going to be full of getters and setters. We can go with name. That's a common one. And all this does is it's a wrapper. Let's go age, and you're an int. And what we'll do, if we look here, I also would say this, do not create a factory for. Some value type equals new. Let's see, what did I call them? Some value object. Because what I would recommend we do is just simply create one in line and say my age equals 100, my name equals Kevin, and that's what I would do for a value object. I would not go through the trouble of creating a factory for this. However, it doesn't mean you can't. So you may have some cool, awesome, amazing value object, but in general, we're going to keep our factory pattern to business objects. And in general, because we're doing this, you could now swap out a class. Let's say we had a class that depends on some iBusiness thingy, and the factory might give you back a mock, or it may give you a concrete edition, or maybe tied to a database or things like that. And that's one other thing that would be sort of evil. If it depends on the file system, the network, or database, you probably might want to add a layer of indirection to make things testable. So anyway, that's kind of the factory pattern from a high level. To summarize, the factory pattern is basically to hide the evil new keywords in a class somewhere else to decouple. And the other new keywords that you use for built-in objects that don't depend on a resource, or value objects, you're probably safe to use them right in your class. And finally, if you don't understand a pattern, just use the new keyword. And then one day you'll probably realize that, aha, this is what he was talking about, and now I understand when to use the factory pattern.